Councillor Flavel and Councillor Russell.
No further apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? No? Councillor Hill?
Yes, Chair, I will be excusing myself from item 5C as I'm speaking against it, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Minutes of the meeting held last month. Are we doing those next month?
They've not been signed off yet.
Okay, lovely, thank you very much. Chairman's announcements. Welcome to Councillor Hack, who's replaced Councillor Joyce, so welcome back, I think, after a little absence. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll move on to Chairman's announcements, which is just that if after you've spoken, there's a door at the bottom of the room. If you want to leave by the door there, then you won't disturb the rest of the meeting that's going on. If you're registered to speak, we'll invite you to speak at the time. Sit at this desk in front of myself. By my feet, there are some lights. Red means you've got the green means you've got your 3 minutes to speak. Amber, you've got 30 seconds left. And the red is the end. Is it not?
It's down here.
It's down here somewhere, on the floor.
Yeah. It's a couple of feet in front of you.
Oh, is it? I can't see because of my screen. Yeah. I can't see myself. Yeah, okay. Fantastic. And if there's a fire alarm go off, we just go out the front door the way we came in. There's no barriers to go through, so it should be quick. Okay, then. We've got a busy meeting this evening. We've got a busy agenda. We've got 13 public speakers. So we'll go straight away to item 5A, which is a proposed extension to provide garaging and storage to Lower Farmhouse in Dodford. So I'll hand over to you.
Good evening, everybody. So this application site is located to the northwest of Dodford, outside the village confines. The proposal is for a single-storey extension to the northeast side of the existing dwelling to provide an attached garage with a storage cum office facility in the roof. The proposed extension would be cohesive to the host dwelling, given the palette of materials is matching and the design is also. It would be subservient to the host dwelling with the front elevation and roof ridge set in line with those existing. The rear elevation would... Ooh. The rear elevation would project 1.8 metres beyond the existing rear elevation, which is considered to result, not to result in any adverse impact to the character of the area. An objection has been received from Dodford Parish Council, summarised on the grounds of development is contrary to policy RA6 and presents cumulative impact due to other recent approvals on the site. No further approvals have been granted at Lower Farmhouse, but an extension was granted at the neighbouring Lower Farm Barn. The Local Highways Authority have not objected and have stated the proposal will not have an impact on the public highway. And for reference, the development as proposed was previously approved in 2021. There has been no material change in local or national planning policy since. Policy RA6 of the local plan supports extensions to existing buildings in the open countryside that respect their form and character. As such, the application is recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. I must remind people as well to speak into the speakers so the people at home can hear us clearly. I've got two public speakers on this, so I'll call on Colin Newton first. If you'd like to come and join us, sit at the table, just introduce yourself, say who you are, and then your 3 minutes will start.
Thank you. Yeah, good idea. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name's Colin Newton, and I'm parish clerk for Dodford Parish Meeting, incorrectly called Parish Council earlier, I should stress. We are a parish meeting, and I represent, obviously, the parishioners of Dodford Village. Thank you. Okay. Whilst we acknowledge that policy RA6 may, on an individual basis, be sympathetic to applications such as this one, we contend that there's a cumulative consideration which needs to be made in situations where multiple applications occur in an open countryside site such as this one. Policy RA6 appears not to address this cumulative harm aspect, which can give rise to sustained piecemeal overdevelopment in open countryside, or put another way, development creep. Multiple development on a site does, we contend, conflict with the overall aims of policy RA6, which we understand seeks to preserve the form and character of our fine villages. Whilst this application generally replicates a similar lapsed application approved in 2021, the circumstances in the intervening period have changed considerably, with 2 further applications having been submitted and approved since then on the same site. These include a large new barn approved under the guise of being for agricultural storage purposes, but which was in 2023 subsequently included in the sales particulars for Lower Farm House, described as a double garage and storage facility, contrary to its agricultural planning approval status. Another application was recently approved for an extension to the adjacent Lower Farm barn. This application had a substantial material change added after the consultation period had closed, something which I've since taken up at the highest level through the recent planning surgeries programme. So in summary, we cannot agree that this is simply a reissue of an earlier approved application, since, as stated, the circumstances on the site have changed considerably since the original approval in 2021, not least of which is the recent serious flooding and catastrophic damage caused to 2 homes on the western edge of Dodford Village, we believe as a result of recent ground excavations carried out on the same site without planning permission or the involvement of the Environment Agency. Clearly, any further building or creation of hard surfaces on this site would, of course, exacerbate the flooding issue. So Dodford Parish Meeting therefore opposes this application for the reasons stated. And I'd be very pleased to answer any questions should anybody wish to place any.
Thank you very much, Mr Newton. If you remain seating, I'll see if anyone's got any questions. Any questions? Councillor Frost.
Works. Hi, thank you for that. Really, I appreciate my memory being jogged, because I remember being involved with at least one of the applications you talked about. There were a number of irregularities that I wonder if you could expand on a bit. I'm sure I got an apology from James Roger as well. There was something to do with the application was changed, and I seem to remember that your parish meeting wasn't reconsulted or something like that. Is that true?
That's absolutely correct. This was the extension done, approved for Lower Farm Barn, and basically there were 2 errors on that which concerned us. One was that we were reported as not having made any comments, and that was rectified and an apology given for that. But the more concerning one was the fact that after the consultation period had closed, under the delegated powers system, the case officer in question made a substantial change by extending the creating a new residential curtilage, which was previously open countryside, and the scale of which was something like about twice the original residential curtilage, which was almost 100% building footprint. So it created a green area consuming open countryside, and we were not consulted on that. Had we had the benefit of that information, we would have vehemently opposed the application at that stage. As it happens, the original proposal, we had a few minor concerns with, but nothing of that scale. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Mr Newton.
Thank you.
I'll call Nigel Osier. Like to come and join the meeting? And again, you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Is that on? Thank you, Chair. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nigel Ozier. I'm planning consultant and agent for the applicant. I acknowledge and thank the planning officer for her recommendations, which clearly I hope members can agree and support the application. As you will be aware from the officer's report, the same proposal was approved in 2021, but unfortunately my client allowed that to recently lapse. I do consider that since the Council's approval of a previous identical proposal, nothing material has changed in terms of local plan policies, which would lead to a different conclusion in terms of this proposed extension, and as set out by the officer in her report. The development does not cause any harm. However, in light of the parish's comments, I need to refer to a couple of matters. Firstly, the proposal will not urbanise the site or the edge of Dodford. The main agricultural barn on the site is full of machinery at the moment, used to deal with aspects of the site maintenance, sheep and so on. The extension proposed to the house will house possessions, smaller items such as lawn mowers, and provide more space for the residents of the house, including perhaps if a person needs to work at home, as we all tend to do more of. Secondly, and I think you've touched on this, the proposals do not conflict with policy RA6. It's clear that the proposed extension is the same height. It reflects the design and materials of the existing. It's the same in form and in the pattern of development. It doesn't change the pattern of development. Of course, policy RA6, as we know, allows for replacement dwellings as well as for extensions. The proposal is small extension and acceptable in terms of its impact, the surroundings and the scale. It's also worth pointing out, because the previous speaker mentioned flooding, my client at the moment has been on the site all day today and will be there tomorrow, and he is actually sorting the land drains out, which he probably doesn't have to do because he's on it, but he's doing it, and that is to help the village too. So hopefully you can support the application. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Just remain seated, and I'll see if anyone's got any questions. Any questions from the committee? Yeah, Councillor Frost.
You explained that the buildings are used for agricultural use at the moment, but we're led to believe that there was, when it was being sold, it was stated it was being used for something different. Could you clear up that?
Well, I wasn't aware of that when the property was sold. I'm only aware, obviously, of the planning position. I've dealt with various aspects of the site, including proposal for 2 holiday homes, which were refused and dismissed on appeal. So it's clearly the site is remaining residential based on the 2 barns. The barn that was built that replaced, I think, a pigsty and something else some years back, that is used for equipment, large equipment is there that is needed for maintenance on the land. The extension will be just ancillary to the house.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Colette, anything you want to come back on there? No?
No other matters to address. Thank you, Chair.
Okay then. So, any questions to the officers from the committee?
Question to the chair.
To me? Question to the officers, sorry. No? Okay. Any comments from the committee on this application? Councillor Cribbin.
Just one comment. I mean, looking at when I read the papers, there was nothing to say who called it in, but that's in the addendum now, saying it's Councillor Smith. Has Councillor Smith? He hasn't said he's coming along. I don't wonder what. It's one of your ward members. Has he mentioned it to you, Councillor Frost?
Can I talk? Yeah, a question for Democratic Service, I suppose. I did speak to Councillor Smith earlier, and he led me to believe that he hadn't been sort of notified or something like that. Is that right? Was he invited to speak? Did he ask to speak? Or?
It's not for Democratic Services to reach out to councillors.
Okay. Right. Okay.
The agenda was published before Christmas, though.
Sure.
So it's been out there quite a while.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I think I was part of the committee who refused the holiday home application, which I think was the correct decision, actually, and obviously it was upheld as well in appeal. I think this is actually a good application. I'm surprised in some ways to see it here. I think it's given what we saw before, I'm surprised that the council aren't necessarily happy with it. So I'd be happy to propose what we have in front of us. Thank you.
Okay, do you have a seconder? Councillor Cribbin to second.
I'm happy to second,
Just
yeah.
miss that, Harry, next time. All those in favour? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 against, 1 against. Okay, so that application is passed. Okay, so moving on to item 5B. This is 49 The Greenway, Daventry. We're just going to swap officers, so just bear with us a moment. One, two. Okay, so Tim, when you're ready, please. I'll hand over.
Okay, can you all hear me? Yep, thanks. Okay, so as you see, the description is to demolish an existing garage and erection of a single-storey 3-bedroom bungalow, which we are recommending for approval. The site location plan, you can see that it is garden land to the east side of 49 Greenway, which is a residential street comprising modest semi-detached and detached dwelling houses, mainly dormer bungalows and bungalows. You can see there on the site location plan the garage to be demolished, and you can see the general density of houses in the neighbourhood. The block plan shows the layout of the proposed new bungalow in relation to neighbouring dwellings, and things to note are, you can see that it will be set further back to accommodate 2 parking spaces at the front. The rear wing of the bungalow is angled away from the neighbour at number 51. The roof has a central ridge, so if you can imagine it, it will slope away from the neighbours either side. And it does include a storage shed, bin storage area and additional planting to deliver a net gain in biodiversity. The plans, again, you can see the central ridge there, and that the roof will slope away, and you can also see that it does meet the minimum space standard for a 3-bedroomed 5-person bungalow. The elevations, you'll see a simple, modest design with a gabled front, which is in keeping with neighbouring houses in the street. And also note on the side elevations, there's no dormers that would overlook neighbours, etc. There's a street scene view as well. It's obviously the one in the middle there, which shows it's centred between the neighbouring properties and is modestly sized, and the design materials generally in keeping. There's some site photos as well that I'd like to show you. The first one there's a set of 3. The one on the left, that is the number 49, which is a semi. Then the middle one, I've just shifted along there, and you can see the driveway with the garage that is to be demolished. And then the one on the right-hand side shows the neighbouring property and their garage as well. And the next site photo shows the garden land to the rear, and you can see how it opens out quite a lot to the rear. And then there's a further set of garden photos. And on that one, the one on the left in particular, that's the host house there, and you can see there won't be any overlooking from that into the new dwelling. The small window that you can see is obscure glazed. So now you've looked at the photos, I'll just go through the key issues as they relate to this application. First of all, the principle of development. That's fine in this location, being as it is an existing residential neighbourhood. In terms of design and appearance, as already noticed, it is modest sized and in keeping with neighbouring dwellings. Materials will be conditioned to ensure they are a good match with surrounding materials, and permitted development rights will be removed, as it is important that the site does not become overdeveloped. In terms of impact on neighbouring amenity, objections were raised on the basis that the proposal will be overbearing and impact on the privacy of neighbours. However, as already mentioned, the bungalow will be modest sized and will be laid out to minimise impacts on neighbouring amenity. As such, I would argue there will be no overbearing appearance, loss of light or overlooking. In terms of parking, the existing drop curb will be widened so that 2 cars can park off-road independently of each other. And removing a section of the existing wall on the side of 51 will also deliver adequate visibility displays. As such, the Local Highways Authority are satisfied with the proposal. And the only other thing I think I'll mention is there was an objection from our colleagues in ecology on the basis that the biodiversity measures did not meet the new rules for biodiversity net gain. However, as the proposal is a self-build, it is actually exempt from the new rules. Nonetheless, the submitted biodiversity plan does contain measures to improve biodiversity, albeit not 10% as per the new rules. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. Got 2 speakers on this, so I'll call on Stephen Dabbs first. Would you like to come and address the committee, please? Just say who you are and who you represent, and then your 3 minutes will start.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members, officers. I'm Stephen Dabbs. I'm a councillor on Daventry Town Council, and I'm not speaking in favour of this development. Our situation with this is you can see the plans within the area of the garden of the hosting house, if you want to call it that. We're concerned with that being significant overdevelopment of the site. You can see how it is crammed in there. Additionally, we are concerned about whether the parking plan is workable because of the strange shape of the parking places. So I don't know whether it is feasible to get one car out when the other car is parked, and which way around that would work, I don't know. And plus the lamppost, which was, I remember being quite of a concern at our planning meeting at Daventry Town Council. And I note on the plans that it suggests that it is not in the way. I would suggest it's actually close enough to be, shall we say, a dangerous feature. It's separate from the wall, and you can see that there are various measurements that have been put in suggesting it's not in the way. I can see it's aligned with the wall, but bearing in mind that the access point is going to be widened, my concern would be that that lamppost may get in the way, perhaps not every day, but it's only got to get in the way once, and somebody will hit it either going in or going out when they're half asleep or just not paying attention. Yes, that's essentially all my points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just remain seated, and I'll see if anyone's got any questions. Any questions to Councillor Dabbs? No? You've got off there, so well done.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, members.
I'll call on Councillor James next, please. Would you like to come and address the committee, Councillor James? You've got 3 minutes.
Right, I'm Councillor James and I represent Daventry East on West Northants Council. In the summer of this year, I received a rather distressing letter from the owner of the property immediately at the rear of this, very concerned about the possibility of development. So I duly went along there and I found a 79-year-old lady with a 97-year-old bedridden husband in a very distressed state. Now, as many officers will know here, I normally don't get involved in calling in planning applications, but I thought I must do something here because these people have got no one else to help them. They're not on the internet. They can't be just abandoned, and after all, they are one of my constituents. So I went along to see them, and I looked at their back garden, which backs on to number 49. You can just see a bit of it there. In fact, it's a bigger garden than number 49. I'll come back to that. And I thought, well, what I'll have to do is to call in this because it deserves a wider berth. It's not to be left to just my usual stance, which is market forces and the law, and stay out. But anyway, so I duly put in the planning grounds, and I put in this, and I'll quickly run through it. The proposal would result in an overbearing development of backland that would detract from the amenities of adjoining residential properties by reason of its height, siting and massing, resulting in a lack of privacy currently enjoyed by adjoining properties. Contrary to policy ENV 10 of Daventry District Council Settlement and Local Countryside Plan, Part 2, Paragraph 130 of the National Planning Policy Framework, and the design principles in the Daventry Town and Parish Design Statement, which requires a development to be suitably located, sympathetic to the surrounding built environment, and to reinforce local distinctiveness that does not undermine the amenity of local residents and protects quality of life and community cohesion. As a result of that, a call-in was approved. Now, this garden of this couple here, which backs onto it, it's a real haven. It's absolutely splendid. And she still works in it at the age of 79. And looking round, I've seen, and I know this over years, I went to school in Daventry, brought up in the area. I know what it was like before, and over the many years, I've seen people put rooms in the roof, extensions here, extensions there. It's beginning to look tired and overdeveloped. There are 3 items which particularly I'd like to point out. The parking as...
Councillor James, your time's up, but if you want to sum up very quickly...
3 things, yeah. The parking, as Councillor Dabbs said, it's going to look like a car park on the front there. The second is that photographs are very misleading. When you're looking at a new building going up over a fence, it's overbearing. It exaggerates the massing of it. And finally, and this is most important, once this is approved, it's the thinned end of a wedge for other developments to be approved, most notably in the complainant's back garden itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just remain seated, and I'll see if anyone's got any questions for you. Any questions, Councillor James? Councillor Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Could you possibly tell me what the length of the garden of the complaint is from the house? Obviously, you've been there.
I would think between the back wall of the bungalow,
yes,
as you can see there, and their fence is about, I would say that was about 20 feet. 20 feet.
What, to their house?
To the garden of the person who's complained.
Oh no, I'm asking you what size of the garden is for the person that's complaining, because it looks quite a big garden.
Oh, it is a big garden.
So how big is it?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's not about a seventh of an acre, I would think.
Okay, so it's quite large.
Yeah, seventh, eighth. Yeah, you can see how large it is.
Yeah, because obviously any change for old people don't really like change, and
exactly.
That is a worry, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And obviously they really appreciate their garden.
Yeah.
But there is lots of places now that do have infill, for properties, and as you know, we're desperately short of houses for people that is affordable primarily, but hopefully this will be affordable because it's only a modest size.
Yeah, I understand that, but we're talking about Daventry, it's not Northampton. In Northampton, you're used to higher density developments. This was never intended to be a high density development when it was created. Okay. And we're not used to that sort of thing. We're having to get used to it in Daventry. But it is spoiling things, and there's something about land economics, and I say this as a former principal lecturer and head of department in land economics. There comes a point where going for ever higher densities is self-defeating. It costs more, in effect, most notably with high-rise stuff, but even with this, because you're driving people out. People, go outwards, out into the villages and so on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See if there's any other questions. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor James.
Thank you.
Anything you want to come back on there, Tim, that you've heard so far?
I'll just mention the lamppost. I have to be guided by what the local highways authority state. I did flag it up myself when I visited the site, and it demonstrates on the drawings that it is just outside the drop curb area, and highways are satisfied with that.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Any questions to the officer? Councillor Beardworth.
You say this bungalow's a modest size, which I can see by the drawings it is, but people are always worried that people are going to come back and say, can I go into a dormer or can I do this? But that would be dealt with a separate planning application that probably wouldn't look favourably because of where it's sited. Am I correct?
Indeed, yes, and we are going to remove permitted development rights in any case, so they can't do anything additional to the house in order to increase the size or develop the site. And if a planning application did come through for a dormer or something like that, it would be looked on its merits. But the likelihood is it might not get approved, but we can't talk about that now because until we see something before us.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the committee? No comments? So the officer's recommendation is for approval. Do I have anybody who wishes to propose we accept the officer's recommendation for approval? Councillor Cribben? Yeah?
Yep, no further comment, but approval.
Approve it. Councillor Barrett seconds that. So all those in favour? And one against. So that application is approved. Okay, so we'll just move on to item 5C, which is 73 Lowlands Close. This is yours again, Tim.
Okay, so 73 Lowlands Close, change of use from a residential house to a children's care home for up to 3 children, and the existing integrated garage will be converted, and we are recommending approval. The site plan and block plan, it's a 2-storey house. You can't see that from there, but you will do from the drawings that will follow. It's a 2-storey house with integrated garage set in the middle of a terrace of 3, and Lowlands Close generally forms part of a larger housing estate that dates from the late 20th century. The existing floor plans show a modest-sized 3-bedroom dwelling, and the proposed floor plans show some internal layout changes to accommodate overnight staff, basically the garage conversion. The existing and proposed front elevation shows how the garage door will be filled in, etc. The site photos, the first one is the street scene from the front, and you can see the site house, the application site is the one with the white garage door there. In the middle, you can see there is off-road parking for 2 spaces, and the surrounding built environment comprises similar sized dwellings. And the next site photo is from the rear, because there is a cul-de-sac to the rear, and that demonstrates that the site backs onto a cul-de-sac containing modest-sized semi-detached dwelling houses. So they're the site photos. The key issues for this one are as follows. The principle of development. Well, both local and national policy aims to ensure the right development is in the right place and that it is inclusive and accords to sustainable development principles. It is also social care policy to place cared for children in residential settings rather than in large institutions. So, as the local area is residential with easy access to local shops and services, it is entirely appropriate for a care facility to be located in this locality. However, impacts on neighbouring amenity concerns were raised about an increase in antisocial behaviour because of the potential characteristics of the cared for children. However, the particular characteristics of the cared for children may not necessarily mean that they will be badly behaved, and at the end of the day they will be under the care of at least 2 trained workers at any one time. Also, the facility will have to meet with quality and safeguarding standards which are monitored and enforced by Ofsted. So, if antisocial behaviour was a persistent issue, it's likely that the facility wouldn't last very long. The Environmental Health Officer also stated that the proposal should not give rise to any greater nuisance than that of a typical family unit. Concerns were also raised about increased comings and goings as care workers change shifts, etc. However, against this, it could be argued that these comings and goings would be no more than for a family that worked shifts and/or had children with needs. In terms of parking, the Highways Authority are satisfied with the existing arrangements and that there will be no intensification of use following the change of use. As such, they had no objections to the proposal. And lastly, just a word on the alterations. The internal alterations would not be subject to planning in any case, and the external alterations, as you saw, are relatively minor and will be in keeping, so do not give rise to any design or appearance issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. We have 3 speakers on this, so I'll call on Diane Lynch first. Would you like to come and join the committee? Welcome. And just say who you are, who you represent, and then your 3 minutes will start.
My name's Diana Lynch, and I'm here representing households in Lowlands Close. We live at number 72 Lowlands Close. It's a terrace house connected to number 73. We are a retired couple and enjoy the peace and quiet of our close. 6 of the houses around number 73 have retired people living in them, and we feel this could be disruptive for us, including other neighbours with families. Last year, 5 university students lived in the house, and there were many times with the music very loud and the walls are not thick, and it was very upsetting for us. We did complain about it, and they were eventually moved out. We feel that 3 children with behavioural problems could cause similar problems because we could hear through the wall if they got really upset. We have had a history in the street with someone with behavioural issues too, living in a children's home with full-time carers. We got in touch with the police many times and they came round. We are aware of what can happen. We wouldn't approach the person that lived there because we was frightened of him and what he would do. He lived in the house opposite, so we already have a house in the street that I think it is still a children's home, but that is a 4-bedroom detached property. I was a carer for 20 years before I retired and worked with children with behavioural and special needs, so I do know what can happen and how they sometimes behave. I don't believe the house is big enough or in the right area for a children's home. It has 3 bedrooms but just 1 lounge and a kitchen downstairs. As the plans say, the garage conversion will be for carers for their bedroom. On a personal note, we own our own property and we feel having a children's home next door would devalue the price of our property. We felt that we needed to speak up about how we feel, not just us, but many houses in our street who feel the same as we do. So I am talking for all of us. There is a lovely couple living in that house right now and they don't want to move. He did try to come to the meeting to put his point of view, but he couldn't get a seat, so I said I would speak for him. We understand that the children have to live somewhere, but a terraced house in Lowlands Close is not the right place for them.
Okay, thank you very much. Just remain seated. See if anyone's got any questions. Any questions? Harry.
Yeah, thank you for that. You spoke about thinness of the walls and hearing next door. At what times were those disturbances or...
It can be any time because the stairs are on connecting walls, so we've had children in there before and they run up and down the stairs and it's very
So you can hear someone going up the
Yes,
stairs in your house. Okay,
yes.
What else can you hear from your house?
We can hear the washing machine when it's on, we can hear if they've got music on. When the students were in, I think they had their music centre on that wall because it was really, really loud.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bearsworth.
Thank you very much for your report to us, but you know that this is up to 3 children.
Yes.
And they could be young children. They don't necessarily have to be behavioural problems. Not all of them do.
Yeah.
A lot of them are taken into foster care because they've been let down by their parents and they need somewhere safe to live.
Yeah, but it says on the thing that it will be children with behavioural problems, so...
Yeah, but
So could it be different to that then?
Yeah, but it might not be... What is a behaviour problem? You know what I mean? It's, you know... I've raised children, I expect you have. You know that they go through difficult phases when they're teenagers and various other times and don't always listen to their parents. It's a similar scenario with these children, and they've been through a lot. So if they could actually put some soundproofing in, would that help at all?
It could do, yes.
Okay, thank you.
But also out the front, you say there's parking for 2 cars, but there's a lot of cars parked there. A lot of the houses have more than 2 cars, so there's always cars out the front. So there isn't really anywhere out the front that they could go out and play, because that's the trouble we had with the lad that lived there before. He'd play football out the front and he didn't care if he hit your car or if he didn't.
Okay.
So that's another thing that I was thinking of.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Hill, I'll call on you next.
Thank you, Chair. So I've called in this application following consultation with residents in Lowlands Drive who, as Mr Lynch has just outlined, some of the concerns, mainly revolving around the potential disruption to the area caused by parking, and also the noise disruption that may be caused by children living in there, potentially with behavioural problems. I think we need to consider the kind of the area and the fact that, you know, these people, a lot of retired people live in the area, and I just wanted the committee to consider the issues that are being raised by residents. So that's why I've called it in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr James. Any questions to Councillor Hill? Councillor Cribbin.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I think I should have asked the previous speaker, but I mean there was an issue about is there a children's home in the general area from that has been.
I can't actually answer that one. That might be something that officers might be able to answer, but not to my knowledge.
Right.
But that would be something that the officers may be able to answer.
Apologies, I should have asked that with the previous speaker.
But I don't believe that would be a material planning consideration anyway. I don't think it is. But no, not to my knowledge.
No.
Is the answer.
But look, the second question I want to ask is obviously your understanding. You represent this area, you know this area quite well.
Yep.
Looking at the photographs we've seen, there seems to be quite a lot of space out the front there. I appreciate people are going to say, well, there's not enough space for parking cars, staff coming and going, all that sort of stuff. It doesn't, I mean, unless those were taken at very quiet times, do you know?
Yeah, I mean, again, I believe these probably were taken during the daytime when there are less cars around, when people aren't at work and that sort of thing. And I think that's probably what the concerns are being raised of, when you may have 3 additional cars there when you've got staff. That's probably what the main concerns are in the evening. So I think it can get a bit busier.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you. So with your obviously knowledge of the area, from an amenity perspective, that house will be looking as an employer house, won't it? Because there'll be people employed there to work.
Yes.
Is that? Can you just go back to that picture, sorry, of the parking? Sorry. Yeah. So from your extensive knowledge of the area, from an amenity perspective, the age demographic, will that have a detrimental impact on the residents, those coming and going, as it operating as a functional business?
It's difficult to say. I mean, obviously, there is a variety of different families and ages in the area. As Mr Lynch pointed out, there are some retired people in the area, but there are obviously families as well. So I think while, you know, there probably wouldn't be a huge amount of change, I don't think necessarily. It's more to do, in my opinion, with the fact that you've got 3 additional cars there, which you perhaps wouldn't otherwise.
Councillor Beardsworth.
It says here, including issues, response from public, obviously you've spoken to people. It says potential of noise nuisance, particularly as there's poor sound insulation between neighbourhood properties.
Yeah.
Well, we've heard that when average families live in these houses, they can hear the washing machine, they can probably hear the toilet flush, they can probably hear me running up and down the stairs. Is there some way, would people be happier if we could put some sound prevention into the property to actually prevent that noise being put through?
Well, yes, but I mean, Sally, you've been around a long time like me, and I think when we discussed HIMOs, especially, we spoke about soundproofing. I don't believe it's something that can be conditioned in a planning application, but obviously that would be something that would be, I think it would definitely make residents very happy, but I don't know whether we have the scope to do that within this condition.
We'll ask the planning
officer.
But
it's something that could be asked, and I think that'd be worth doing.
I think probably whoever moves in there, it might be a help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Councillor Hill. Yeah, so this particular application is for 3 children.
It is free.
I mean, the house seems quite decent, and you know, you could have 4 or 5 people living there. And the issue, what's your main issue? I mean, obviously you've said that you spoke to the residents and they've raised it.
I mean, look, for me personally, as I said, I put out a call whenever an application comes in. I'll always ask local residents what they think of it, and was contacted by a number of residents who raised the concerns, quite outlined by Mr. Lynch, and I felt that it was something that needed to be heard at committee rather than just a delegated officer's decision. Hence why we're here.
No further question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call on Pat Dooley. Hello, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, Pat Dooley, I'm speaking for this application. To be honest, Tim has explained this quite well in his speech previously, so there's just really catching up on a few bits that has been mentioned. One thing you mentioned, Councillor Barrett, you mentioned it appears as an employer's house. I don't quite understand that. It's a bit of a strange comment to make because it looks no different than any other house on the front street frontage. You'll also note regarding the parking in the photograph there that there is one garage has been converted. Garage has been converted, and there is a car parked out there. We've got a much larger drive, so we could easily get 2 cars on there. The third car would be a changeover of staff, maybe, but that's no different than a visitor coming to a family home. They've got to park somewhere, you know. So I wouldn't say it's going to have any pressure whatsoever on the parking to that exists as a 3-bedroom family dwelling. And that is quite critical, that this is not an overdevelopment in the number of occupants in the property here. We could have, as Tim has made in his report, he's referred to the use of C3B, which is a use where you can have 6 people living in a property without planning permission, as is sort of where they need a level of care. That is a route we could have went with this, and there are a number of applications that have been approved in Northampton, albeit even with a certificate of lawfulness. But in this instance, we need the C2 use for Ofsted requirements, so hence the application. The noise, as I think the noise is an issue in every terraced house. I think I can hear my neighbours in my property. It's not something it's one that you have to live and grow with. But we're not anticipating the noise levels to be here any different than what it would be with the 5 students who were living here previously. So that's not. I don't see that as a major problem. The age group in the area, yes, it might well be that there's a number of elderly residents, but there isn't any condition that you must be of a certain age to live in Lowlands Close. There are families living in this area. So it's like unfortunate, but life moves on and we don't choose our neighbours. And the other house that's not really run appropriately, the other care home, that's not really, I know nothing of that, but that's something not really of a consideration in this instance. So, and playing football, well, the frontage, this has got an ample back garden, plenty of room for the children to play, and I see no reason why, that would cause any nuisance either. So if there's any questions, I'll happily answer them.
Okay, any questions to Mr. Dooley? Harry.
Oh, thank you. Apologies if you don't understand what I was talking about regarding the immunity and the business. That is going to be run as a business. So Children's Home is run as a business. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay. So run a business. You've got staff who work there. They're employed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a business because you've got staff turning over, staff turning up to work, staff leaving, and turnover. Hence, my second question was the amenity issue, and that's why I asked Councillor Hill. Is that infrastructure secure for that amenity issue relating to business people, which those workers will be working for a business, coming and going? Okay, that's my point. Was that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, really. Well, in response to that, the property is. As a business, it's not a business where you've got people turning up, coming and going all the time. It's it's no different than people coming in and going to work all the time. But anyway, that's your view. Thank you. Well, that's my point.
Thank you, Councillor Bearsworth.
Thank you for your presentation. Could you possibly give me any idea of the age of the children you're looking to look at?
I think, did we not put an age range? It'd be from, is it from, it might be from 6 to 16 or something like that. I'm not sure.
See, I didn't find it. I was just looking for it. But so in between 6 to 6 years?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So they're not babies?
Oh, no, they're not babies, no.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Pat? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything you'd like to come back on there, Tim, before we open up to questions? Oh, yes. Please, Eamon.
Yeah, just to answer the point of the question of the business, the use class that this falls within, in planning terms, is residential. It's a subdivision of residential use. I hear what you say in terms of it operating as a business, but it's residential use. In that sense, it's a subdivision of that. And the other point is that many of the other residential properties more than capable of operating businesses from their property, provided there's no material change of use. They can operate, and indeed people are encouraged to work from home. So you're going to have a whole range of these types of uses, but to call it a business use would be, I would say, it's a nuance that you probably shouldn't sort of be using in terms of determining the application, because in planning terms it's a residential use.
Yeah, thank you for that. I didn't say I was going to use that. I was just asking for clarity. And with regards to the working from home, I didn't talk that, so I'm not sure the relevance there. But yeah, I'm not talking in terms of business use of it, and I don't think I made that point.
Any further questions to Tim before we go on to comments? Councillor Beersworth.
I did mute, and I don't know if it's possible or not, to actually put the restriction of having some soundproofing put into the home just to make it more comfortable for neighbours. I don't know if it's possible to do that as part of the conditions.
From what I understand, that's not the kind of condition that we can impose on this application.
Okay, any comments from the committee? Councillor Beersworth.
I have to be honest, I'm a corporate parent, as we all are, and we have an awful lot of children in care, and to move them into a home that just has 3 children, which is more a normal life for a child, to be with other people, and the consistency of having 2 people looking after them all day. I'd hate to turn this down, because we desperately need homes for these children who have been through an awful lot already in their lives, and we're going to try and get them on the right road before they're adults.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beersworth. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I think those elected in the room, obviously with the corporate parenting link, as Sally's talked about there, from a compelling point of view, that there is a massive need and there's a shortage of spacing. My only concern was the amenity aspect, in terms of, is the residential area able to facilitate the movement of those staff who will be there and the turnover, hence my comments earlier. So I think from a corporate parent perspective, it's a very compelling application, but my concern, which I've raised quite clearly, is the amenity of those 3 staff potentially being coming and going, and whether that area is
and then one changing to,
yeah, that's fine. So whether that's capable of meeting that need, and I think I've raised that for the committee to hit. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Can I ask one question to the officer? Is the applicant, obviously they've secured the support from the NCT, is the applicant known to us? I mean, he's not an in-house applicant, is he? Or?
I don't know the applicant personally, no.
Okay, Councillor Cribbin.
Just to come back on Councillor Hack's point, I mean, I think this particular applicant has had previous applications before this committee. He's somebody that does this on a regular basis. Is a recognised, yeah, in a sense, is a recognised provider of children's homes. Yeah, from my understanding.
Okay, so the officer's recommendation is for approval. Do I have anybody who wishes to propose we accept the officer's recommendation? Councillor Beardsworth, you're proposing. Second by Councillor Hack. All those in favour? Against? Abstain? Abstain. Okay, 1 abstention. So that application is passed. So we're just going to move over offices again before we move on to item 5E. D, sorry, 105 Lee Road. This is yours, Jonathan, so we'll just give you a few moments to get set up.
May I just ask, while we're waiting, has there been a change in the rules? Because when I called in an application, I wasn't allowed to say... There has been a change?
Yeah.
Another change? Wow.
Another change. It seems every month there's a change.
And where can I see these changes?
In the Constitution.
Right, and is it possible to have a procedure in place so that when the Constitution's changed, that we're told it's changed? Otherwise I have to just keep looking every day.
It should go to the council. But honestly, Council Boss, it changes every single month, it seems.
The Constitution changes every month?
It feels like that. No, it goes to the committee that deals with the Constitution, and it goes there, then it's reported back to the council, and that's all it's
So without reading the whole Constitution every month, couldn't we just be highlighted the bits that we need to read so that I can see the changes? That's a reasonable thing to ask. So it's in that will take me to the places that have changed. Okay. No, I know. Okay, thank you.
We'll keep an eye on it and we'll let you know. I mean, it doesn't change every single month, it seems, because we have people who call in applications and the council needs to come, then the council doesn't need to come. Then the council can submit a report, then the council doesn't need to submit a report, and then they can sit in the room while the applications are.
Even if this committee could highlight a change, that would be really helpful, but if that's difficult.
Okay, Jonathan, 105 Lee Road, item 5D, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a plan application for conversion of a property into Class C1 serviced accommodation. The application is a retrospective application. If you look at paragraphs 2.1 to 2.3 of my report, it defines what serviced accommodation means. The slide in front of you shows the site location plan. The property is a terrace property located in the Abington area of Northampton, tightly packed residential setting with parking on street along the length of the Lee Road. Next slide, please. This slide shows the layout of the property. The property has 5 bedrooms, and it has a living room, kitchen room, dining room, and 2 bathrooms, one of which is an ensuite. Next slide, please. The elevations remain unchanged, with no change to the external of the property. Next slide, please. These slides show the photographs of the street. The left-hand slide shows the photograph of the existing property, and the right-hand slide shows the parking issues in the property on street along Lee Road. Parking is at a premium throughout the day. Next slide, please. This slide shows the parking on the street. The application has been recommended for approval tonight. Highways are not objecting. Environmental Health are not objecting. There have been a number of neighbour objections to the proposal, which are reported in the committee report, and the application has been called in by Councillor Smith. The application is recommended for approval subject to conditions outlined in the report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jonathan. Councillor Smith, would you like to come and join us? And you know the drill. So there we go.
So I'm Councillor Zoe Smith, one of the councillors for Abington Phipsville, and I'm speaking on behalf of all Abington and Phipsville councillors. I did email just earlier on. I've got some details in full in the supporting documents because, whilst usually 3 minutes is enough, I didn't feel with this one the extent of the concerns we have. This is an extremely densely populated area, and whilst I absolutely recognise that in planning terms we can't go with a HMO percentage, there is a 28% HMO density in the 50-metre radius around this property, so it's already massively oversaturated with properties that are not C4 use, so this with family usage and privately housed usage. So I think the impact of this on residential amenity for the neighbours will have a really strong impact on residential amenity in an area which already has so much housing, which isn't. C4 use. There is a real concern with parking, and I recognise again the material considerations. However, I think it is really important to combat the bit in the report that says that cars will park at the rear of the property, as the application originally said, because there is just an alleyway behind the property which is privately owned, and they would have no right of parking there. So it's a contradiction that needs to be borne in mind given what's said in the application. It is a point, again, I recognise that planning can't take this into account, but we've had to highlight the fact that it was a retrospective application, as initially it wasn't put in as a retrospective application. The incomings and goings would be very similar to those of a HMO with a huge turnover of occupancy. I'm particularly concerned by reference in the application that it could be used either for groups of workers or for families in temporary accommodation, because those are massively different needs, and it would be a really inappropriate use, the layout as it is. So if it did go ahead, I think it would need to be considered that it shouldn't be used for any form of family accommodation, and particularly a safeguarding what should be used to ensure that families were never in there at the same time as groups of workers. I think that even with groups of workers who might be known to each other in a professional context for the duration of a job, still being asked to share one bathroom between 4 people is an inappropriate amenity, just as it would be in other properties of this nature. So I think that really ought to be taken into account when this is looked at. And I think finally the committee just needs to take into consideration that this can be rejected on residential amenity, neighbouring amenity rules, and also the residential amenity for people who would be living in the property, albeit temporarily.
Okay, thank you very much, Zoe. Well done. See if there's any questions for you. Any questions, Councillor Smith? Yeah, Councillor Bearsworth?
Just clarification on how many. I mean, I know Lee Road, it's always jammed with cars. It's, you know, even midday, because people park there to go to work. But I've just wondered how many HMOs were in that area, because it seems quite high density.
With this, whilst I recognise this isn't allowed to be put as a HMO, but in terms of the HMO density, there is a HMO density of 28% within a 50-metre radius of this property, which is what I mean when I say there's a huge number of not family housing, sort of housing in that area. And I think that's the point. We're not allowed to do it, which is, I think, the huge danger of this application, that we're not allowed to see it as a HMO, despite it operating in very similar ways, and the precedent that it might set. But the density of HMO, and that's just one aspect, is 28%. So the surrounding area, that's a huge number of non-family housing, and the loss of a family at home in an area that's already largely used in that sort of way.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Any further questions for Councillor Smith? No? Okay, thank you very much, Zoe. Any questions to the officers?
Can I go?
Yes, certainly can, Councillor Bearsworth.
I did, sorry. Seeing it's a 4-bedroomed, 1-bathroom property, what is it classed as? It's not, and it's going to be people in there that aren't a family.
Just to clarify, there's actually 2 bathrooms in the property, 1 bathroom and an ensuite bathroom, so in total there's 2 bathrooms.
Yeah.
Just to clarify a couple of things, they are actually applying for C1 service accommodation. It's not a HMO they're applying for, despite the kind of the conversation going towards HMOs, and I haven't calculated the HMO concentration of the 28% in the area, because obviously that's not really relevant to this application, because they're applying for a C1 service accommodation application as such. So by definition, the actual paragraph 2.1 of the report gives some information in terms of the occupiers of the property. So it could be families living together, or it could be work colleagues who know one another. The difference with an HMO, the people who live together are unrelated to each other. With this type of property, it's basically people who are families or people who know each other, work colleagues or companies, people who know each other very well.
or comments? Go to comments. Councillor Cribbin.
Comments. It's a comment really generally about obviously C1 serviced accommodation. I do accept what Councillor Smith is saying about this could set precedent. If we've got these things, if there's too many HIMOs in an area, people start putting forward applications for serviced accommodation. Is it a thin end of a wedge going forward? I mean, obviously, for this particular application, that's not particularly relevant, but I'm just wondering what we have as a council because we have quite strong rules about HIMOs. Perhaps it's my ignorance, but I don't know whether we've got similar supplemental planning guidance in respect of service accommodation. Is this going to be the next HIMO type of situation?
To answer your question, there's no specific guidance in terms of supplementary plan documents we have for service accommodation. One of the things I would point out is that the plan regulations are due to change in the very near future to allow an additional use class in the plan regulations called Class C5. So in the very near future, the change of use from a dwelling to the short-term let will actually be probably permitted development. It can't be confirmed as yet because it hasn't come into legislation, but in the very near future, the government last year introduced a consultation exercise, and probably in the next number of months, it is quite possible that this type of accommodation will not require planning permission.
Thank you. Just a comment really for the committee. I know that road really well, and I know what Councillor Smith's talking about with the parking. I'm just concerned about amenity again. Whether can that potentially take? I know the parking's the rear, but can that potentially take another 3-4 drivers? I know people. It's in the report about cycle and etc. But can the infrastructure support what we're trying to do? And I have a very significant overriding concern that what we've talked about here, HIMO by a different avenue, and I get what you're saying there, absolutely, because the parking requirement wouldn't be met. So I've got real concerns around, can that area sustain what we're being asked to approve there? My view is it can't, because I know the area very well, and I don't think the local amenities in that area can support that.
Councillor Bearsworth.
Yes, I mean, I'm very disappointed that government hasn't done something about Airbnbs, because they are another problem area where people are taking over homes. I like HMOs, but not declaring them and not using them as family homes. So that is another concern, and this is almost like an Airbnb, to be honest, even though it's not casting itself as that. And I do know Lee Road very well, and I drive down it quite a lot, and you can never, ever find a parking space. It's really bad for the residents there, and it's not just at home time, it's throughout the whole day, because there's businesses and flats down there as well. So I really do have concerns about this one.
Any further comments? Councillor Hack.
Thank you, Chair. On this one, I do have some concerns as the ward councillor, Councillor Smith stated that there are 28% licensed HMOs operating within the 50 metres radius. Whether they're licensed or unlicensed, I don't know, but 28% that is high, and the road is always busy. I know the area very well. So on this one, I don't think I could support this wholeheartedly. So 50-50 on this. Thank you.
But remember, this isn't a HIMO.
I know, but it's another way of. It's like Airbnb but without regulated. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the officer's recommendation is for approval. Do I have anybody on the committee who wants to propose we accept the officer's recommendation for approval? Would it help if I proposed? Do I have a seconder? Okay, does anybody want to propose an alternative recommendation? Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I'm going to say we reject on impact on local amenity, that the area is not sustainable for the application and it'll have a detrimental impact on the amenity of the area, and I propose that.
Impact on local And parking as well, or is that, do you mean parking?
No, parking was just a relevant example I gave, but all local amenities.
Okay.
Through you, Chairman, just seeking clarification on the sustainability aspect of it. You say it's not a sustainable location for the business. Well, for the operation, for the use.
So we've got impact on local amenity, the detrimental effect on the local community, and parking as well, haven't we?
Yeah, so okay, I changed the phrase. I don't think that's a sustainable location. I'll explain it in terms of expecting more cars to be able to park there. I don't think we can sustain that expectation. I don't think it's relevant. I don't think it will work.
Okay.
So it's more about increased parking and its impact on the surrounding area, rather than a sustainable location.
And seconded by Councillor Bearsworth. All those in favour? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favour. Against? And all. So that application is refused. Okay. Just going to change around again before we move on to 5E, which is land off Farnborough Road in Daventry. So Sunny's going to come and do this. Okay, over to you, Sunny.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for a full planning permission for 114 residential dwellings and associated works. It's situated off Farnborough Drive in Daventry and is currently undeveloped land. It has an extent plan permission for residential development which was approved in 2018. As part of this plan permission, the care home that can be seen on the location plan, which is here, was constructed, but the rest of the site, which includes the application site, was not built out and has been left undeveloped for some time. The site has then been sold off to the applicant, who is the house builder, and comes forward with the proposed scheme. In addition to the extent plan permission, the site is allocated within the local plan for residential development. The dots on the site plan identify the affordable housing provision, whilst the properties without the dots depict market housing, which can be seen from the plan that the properties are well distributed across the site. Overall, statutory consultees have no objection to the proposed development, and on a planning balance, officers consider the merits of the scheme outweigh the harm, and thus it is recommended that plan permission is granted subject to conditions and Section 106 agreement. The next few slides show photos of the site from different viewpoints. That's looking across the site. That's looking to the northeast, and you can see some of the housing in the background. That's looking towards the west. You can see the care home to the left, and then furthermore housing in the background. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sunny. We have 3 speakers on this, so I'll call on Stephen Dapps first. Right, can you join us again?
Thank you, Chair. I'll introduce myself again in case people weren't listening. I'm Stephen Dabbs. I'm a councillor on Daventry Town Council, and I'm representing that council tonight. You may wonder why, when it says Ward Braunston and Crick, Braunston and Crick Ward actually just encroaches into the Daventry boundary, so it actually falls under the Daventry Town Council. So, find my notes. Okay. We do understand that it's very difficult to oppose developments such as this. You can't say, oh, we don't like it, can't have it, because it is a development site. The first thing I'd like to point out, we were actually, as a council, disappointed in the lack of consultation that we had from the developers, and this was mentioned in our comments that were submitted back in February last year. We know also that revised plans have been done, but even though we've had revised plans, we continue to have concerns with on-street parking, and although the standards may have been met, according to highways and so on, local knowledge will indicate that there is significant issues in the area with multi-car households, which the parking provision does not adequately handle. Another thing is that we've had revised plans which has fixed a number of problems relating to security, crime, fly tipping and so on. But in resolving those, new issues have been created. And it seems a bit pointless to only fix one issue, but to create another one at the same time. I'll just go through some specific items. Tandem parking. There is a lot of tandem parking on this area, and tandem parking is where you have two parking places, one parked behind the other, so you always have to move one car to get the car out from behind. And when we look at the numbers of tandem parking places, I actually went through the detailed plan which shows the parking places. 29 of the properties, which is 25% of the total, has a tandem parking place. Other parking problems is that we have a significant number of parking places not in front of its associated property. And I'm not looking at the flats here, because obviously if you're on the third floor of a flat, you can't have a parking space just outside your window. But I'm looking at the non-flat properties, and here I counted 22, 20% not in front of their actual houses. So, you know, you sum those up, we've got around about a 50% problem in terms of the parking issues. And as an example, I looked on, I don't know whether we can look at it here, probably isn't time, at numbers 52 and 53. If it was a better design, you could actually put the parking spaces in front of the relevant properties. My issue is that my issue is that you don't want to be sitting in your front room watching your next door neighbour wash his car or tinker with his fine vintage vehicle, which you might consider to be a wreck. So my opinion is that there are many issues with this. In the main, the plans are probably okay, but it's not good enough. We would suggest that, or I would suggest that this decision is deferred and the plans are revised to tackle these parking issues, and then come back to the council for a decision.
Okay, thank you. We'll just remain seated and see if there's any questions. Any questions for Mr. Dabbs? Councillor Frost?
Just if we are minded to agree with that, just remind me what the procedure is around. We have to let the whole thing run its course before. If one of us wanted to recommend a deferral along those, for those reasons, that comes in the end, doesn't it? Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much. So call on Councillor Humphreys. I'd like to come and join us. Thank you. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you. Notwithstanding the revisions to the design of this proposal, Daventry Town Council and Middlemore Residents Association continue to have concerns about the increase of on-road parking problems on Farnborough Drive. This road already has significant parking problems, which will only be exacerbated by the increased traffic that 114 households dwelling will inevitably generate. Councillor Stephen Dabbs from the Town Council has described the current parking issues in more detail. My additional concerns with this proposal is its compliance with planning policy, or rather absence of compliance. The report itself giving so many examples. What function does policy, supplementary planning guidance and design codes serve if a developer has licence blatantly to ignore them? The proposal doesn't meet the housing mix required by policy H08 of the local plan, or the affordable housing requirements of policy H04 of Daventry's housing SPD. However, compromises have had to be made following a viability assessment. The full comment made by planning policy is that while the proposal broadly provides a good mix of size, type and tenure of residential accommodation, however, it isn't in line with the suggested ranges within policy 808, and it should be determined if there is sufficient justification to allow the proposed mix, particularly of market housing. Good design is a key aspect of sustainable development, creates better places in which to live and work, and helps make development acceptable to communities. NPPF paragraph 131. Design guides and codes provide a local framework for creating beautiful and distinctive places with a consistent and high quality standard of design. In this report, paragraph 7.8 to 7.10 outline where the proposal does not comply with the Middlemore Design Code. Offering a development with not a single learning area of play, there should be 2, 10 plots with no private gardens, 6 plots with awkward-shaped gardens and limited privacy, and an unquantified number of gardens of a disproportionate size. There are further examples I don't have time to list now. Is it acceptable for permission to be granted to a scheme which the case officer describes as not a high-quality development? If a proposal does not wholeheartedly, in the case officer's words, comply with the local design code and is not of high quality, then it's hard to see how such a development will function well and add to the overall quality of the area for the lifetime of the development, as required by paragraph 135 of the MPPF. The officer considered a satisfactory scheme on a fine balance and compliant with paragraph 135. He believes that NV 10 of the local plan part 2 is satisfied. ENV 10 states that good design that is of high quality will be supported. Given his own words are that the proposal is not a high quality development, it's hard to see how this policy is satisfied. For these reasons, I respectfully ask for you to reconsider the recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Humphreys. Just remain seated. Let's see if anyone's got any questions for you. Any questions for Councillor Humphreys? Oh, Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, just a quick one. Thank you for that summary. Very clear. Just one really quick question. In terms of like the learning areas of play, were you disappointed to see no provision was made, and what value would that add to this area?
Well, the only open space is near the very large sud, but I didn't find the answer to that. The comment from the case officer very satisfactory, really. There should be 2.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Beardsworth.
I was just reading 5.63. It says, the development currently has an inward-looking approach, but adopting an outward-looking approach perspective would be preferable, positioning the houses to face towards Drayton Reservoir, where there is cycle and pedestrian links along the edge. Would be advantageous. There seems to be a lot in this that I wanted to ask the officer about, but to me it just seems that we're being asked to rush something through that's going to be not a very good design, not what we want for the area. And I'm really concerned that though we need houses, we shouldn't be rushing through design faults on houses. I don't know if you agree with me on that.
That's what I was really trying to convey in my representations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, do you want to come back on anything there, Sunny? Yes. Oh, sorry, got one more speaker, sorry. Okay. Got one more speaker. So thank you very much, Councillor Humphreys. Alistair Russell would like to come and join us. Sorry, it's getting carried away there.
Yes, hello, I'm Alistair Russell. I'm Planning Manager for Stonebond Properties. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. Just wanted to pick up one point that was raised by the Parish Council. We did try to engage with the Parish Council on 2 occasions, and were told by the clerk that there wasn't any point in attending a meeting, so just wanted to clarify that. This is an allocated site for housing with an existing planning permission. The application site forms part of the wider Middlemore allocation, adjacent to recent residential development and one of the final pieces remaining from the allocation. Development principles for Middlemore were established in the Daventry District Local Plan in 1997. After 27 years, the principle for housing here is well established, and it is time for this site to deliver quality housing for local people. Stonebond recently attended the Council's West Northamptonshire Housing Delivery Summit, and we're pleased to engage with the Council on helping to deliver the homes needed. We're working in partnership with Futures Housing Association, who are here in support tonight, to deliver additional affordable housing on the site with the use of Homes England grant funding. The proposal is in one of the most sustainable locations in the authority within the town of Daventry. As a town, Daventry sits at the very top of the settlement hierarchy above rural settlements. It is therefore one of the most appropriate locations and places for development in West Northamptonshire. It should be noted that through the application process, 142 neighbours were notified by the council and invited to comment. This resulted in only 2 letters of objection from local residents. There are no statutory objections, including from highways, and affordable housing officers written in support of the proposal. Stonebond have worked hard with the council's officers and undertaken a series of meetings with urban design over the last 14 months. Changes included reducing the number of dwellings to 114, introducing additional soft landscaping, key marker buildings, introducing more pedestrian connections through the site, connecting into the reservoir and the wider public open spaces. And just to clarify, because it is a wider allocation, there are significant areas of open space just around the site as well, including 2 play areas within a 5-minute walk just to the north and the west, very close by. The homes will be constructed to a highly sustainable level, exceeding building regulations. This includes timber frame construction, which benefits from 20% less embodied carbon than traditional housing methods. In summary, this is a final piece of a 27-year-old housing allocation. It is one of the most sustainable locations in West Northamptonshire, supported by policy and officers with the most minimal level of public objection. At Stonebond, we're ready to work in partnership with Futures Housing Group to help deliver some of these much-needed homes for this site. Thank you.
We'll just see if there's any questions for you. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you for that. If you've got the report in front of you, 7.8, page 58, various failings of this, elements for the design code, etc., etc. I'm going to focus on the learning area of play. What you referenced there is at Middlemore. I know the area really well. There's a great play area at Middlemore. I don't like that you've quoted that there is one in another development further down the road when you're not meeting elements that you need to meet. So I'd like to know the justification of why you haven't put in the 2 laps, please.
Yeah, as I said, this was in consultation with the council. We discussed this matter with them. There are play areas in the locality. Potentially, if we can position them on the site, if that is a requirement of this committee, we would look at that as potentially an additional planning obligation. So we're happy to secure that way if that's necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Beersworth.
I noticed that there's several things I noticed, but if you bear with me. First and foremost, the fact of parking. I mean, years ago I used to be on the fire service board, and they said if only developers talked to us, because we have to get a fire engine down to a property quickly, and there's a lot of traffic. On parking, they have to take cars out to get to it. Have you dealt with the fire service over this to find out if this is adequate for a start? Hang on, there's others asking altogether. I'm disappointed as well and somewhat amazed that so many properties have no gardens at all. Don't people realise how much important open space is? If you watch various programmes on property, in London they say, oh, if you've got a little garden, it's a real asset, you know, a window box. People desperately need their own little place to have a barbecue, to have friends around, to let children play in the sunshine. And there's so many of them here, and some of them are so awkwardly shaped gardens and offer limited privacy. Why are you doing this now to people that have got to live in these places? Unfortunately, people who design them very rarely go and live in them themselves. And to me, they should be made to live in them for 5 years to actually understand what it's like to live without a garden when you've got children, to live in a property that hasn't got these problems. The other things is, I mean, there's so many things in this that I could raise with you, and I don't want to make it all, but it's just, though we're desperate for housing, I know that, but I've seen the mistakes made in other parts of the town that we should never make again, and we should be learning from our errors. And I think possibly this is something that really needs to be reviewed and looked at.
Councillor Beard, is there a question rather than a comment?
Comment, sorry. The question is, why are you putting properties there without gardens?
Just to go through the points I think that you picked up there, yes, we have had consultation with the fire authorities. It's been tracked for fire engines. I think in terms of on-street parking, that I think was one of your concerns about that. Obviously, there is a balance there, and particularly along Farmer Drive, urban design comments were that they wanted quite a strong street frontage rather than having driveways. So that is one of the reasons why there are rear parking courts, for example. In terms of the gardens, those properties without gardens are the one-bed masonettes and the flats. Now, I personally did live in a one-bed flat for 5 years without a garden. You make use of public open space, of which this does connect into. So, yes, whilst the garden size is perhaps, particularly for the one beds, perhaps are somewhat limited, we are working, as I say, with Futures Housing Group to deliver these, and a large number of them will be housing association properties for people trying to get their first step on the ladder, which was how I used my one-bed flat. Yeah, I think that hopefully that's answered your question, possibly.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, no. Sunny, is there anything you want to come back on there? Any comments you want to make?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll come back on some few points here. Okay, so one of the concerns that were mentioned was on-street parking. And that's linked with tandem parking and no parking to the front for the flats. In terms of on-street parking, that's a behavioural where it can't be controlled through planning. It's more of a civil matter. In terms of the scheme, it delivers the parking provision required in the SPD for parking spaces, and highways have no objections to it. Members need to consider, from a planning perspective, policy requires the harm for it to be accumulative on the network and highway safety. Our highway officers haven't indicated that. So that's with the on-street parking. Tandem parking, the applicant has revised and they have reduced the amount of tandem parking that was originally submitted, and that's including the parking courts as well. To that, the design officer doesn't express no objections with it, and highways themselves don't express objections. So it's acceptable in terms of from officer's point of view. Going on to, it was mentioned about the house mix. The house mix, the officers have worked, the case officer and the housing officer and the viability consultant have worked closely to see what the optimum could be achieved from the scheme. Given that the applicant has submitted a viability consultant, and that plays a significant part in determination of this application. The MPPG does talk about when the viability has been submitted and it has gone through thorough scrutiny, that planning then doesn't become burdensome on a scheme for it not to be then deliverable. So on basis of that, through this scrutiny, the housing mix that's been provided and affordable housing provision has been considered acceptable from officers' point of view, bearing in mind the viability appraisal that we have seen. To go on to then about the design code. The design code it has elements of flexibility in it. So it's not strictly that the development has to achieve every element of it. In regards to that, so when officers have considered if improvements were made to the scheme, what sort of impact that would have. And that comes back to then viability and whether it could be delivered. So when officers were considering reducing quantum of development to be able to address some of the concerns, it was considered that it wouldn't be unlikely feasible for those improvements to be made without having an impact in terms of the viability of the scheme. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Thank you. Just pick up on that viability thing. Sort of well explained, but when you sort of cut to the chase, I think what you're saying is that the developer has said that there's not enough money in the project to be able to afford, how shall I put it politely, a higher quality housing, and you've been convinced of the arguments that there's no choice than to build this. There's just not enough money in the scheme. Is that? Do I understand that that's your position?
In terms of the viability, what it's come back as is that when you look at the planning obligations that would normally be expected from a scheme, the development itself won't be able to deliver the level of planning obligations. There is flexibility in terms of policy and in what can be delivered when a viability assessment has been submitted. And in regards to that means then the officers have achieved the best that they believe that could be achieved from the scheme.
Chair, I've got it. This needs to be thrashed out. The developer's paid a sum of money for the site. I don't know how much, but if they've overpaid for the site and there's no money left to build nice houses, it's the most extraordinary argument that we're being asked to agree. What by the officer's own admission is a suboptimal quality of housing. It's the most extraordinary thing. What does everyone else think?
Councillor Bearsworth,
to follow on from Rupert, I'm really surprised that this is before us, having read the report 2 or 3 times. I've never had a report that's actually said we're going with it even though it's second rate, virtually. And I don't agree that we should be providing homes for people in West Northants that are not the best we can do. There's so many things in here that I think it's terrible. I really do, no gardens, no. Okay, you might live in a flat or a maisonette, but you might have a mother and a child, you might have elderly people. They still want to go and sit in the garden. Why are we going down this road? When in 5.63, the current development is inward-looking approach, but adopting an outward-looking perspective would be preferable. Well, why can't it turn round? Why can't they change things? Yes, my question is, are we as an authority going to accept second rate in future, or are we going to push for excellence? That's a question. Okay.
Look, I sympathise with members. I suppose it's a decision that members need to make in terms of what they consider more important in this aspect. Is it the design and against the viability of the scheme? Like I said, officers consider they did give careful consideration to alternative improvements, and that it was considered that it is unlikely to yield significant results, and so yeah.
Yes, Simon.
I think in terms of viability and balancing that against quality design, I think our perspective is a little bit on a wider sense. It's not about necessarily the price that was paid for the site. It's the fact that as a local authority we need to maintain a supply of housing, and the development industry are telling us this is a very challenging time to deliver new homes. If you increase the size of gardens, that by inference increases the price of those homes to the consumer and then the difficulty that they need to fit on a certain quantum of development in order to deliver the site. So I think our perspective is it's viability in a wider sense. It's about maintaining delivery, achieving the best quality we can within the sort of difficulties that the housing market is currently having in delivering new homes. And Sonny's balanced what he's got from the Section 106 against the sort of standard of the layout. And if we were to say, let's put in some more play areas here, let's put in some more trees, let's put in some bigger gardens, all of a sudden that's less units on that site, less ability for them to deliver, and then we're in a challenging environment, and that's the sense that we're at. We're in a delicate balance, and I think it achieves a reasonable balance of quality of design with a reasonable outcome in terms of Section 106 and other benefits. There is public open space within the locality. There are gardens within the development. There is sufficient parking. There's a range of housing on there, and I think overall what we try to do is strike the balance between maintaining the delivery of homes, being realistic of what you can achieve in the market at the time, and then delivering a reasonable quality scheme in this locality is what I'd say.
Thank you. Is that a quick question from Harry?
Thank you, Simon. So, in terms of, I appreciate design code is flexible, but we have an obligation to what will probably be, I don't know, a proportion of young families on there, young children, to have an interest, okay? So, the Middlemore play area is about 8 metres by 8 metres. You're telling me that's going to, two 8 by 8 squares, north and south on that plan there, is going to impact the viability. Is that because it doesn't, in my view, and you can't use that argument. That's a sustainable argument for me. I won't support this. I won't support this because, again, and I appreciate what everyone else has said, but my little bit in this, and I appreciate our speaker saying he'd come back at that. We have to set these environments up for the people to use them, so they've got to be fit for purpose. Middlemore has an example, literally 5 minutes away, where you just copy. In the north and south of that development, that has ticked that box for me, and I would support that. However, I'm not going to support this current application, and I would encourage a deferral to come back at a later point.
Okay, so that's your comment.
Sorry, it was a question because it was tongue in cheek, because I know you could fit 2 8 by 8 metre squares of play equipment north and south on that.
A comment as well, then we'll come on to comments.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Frost.
You have to decide if this is a comment, and if you want me to turn to a question, I'll try to. But there's an article about this in the Chronicle Echo, and it's just piqued my interest, if you like. It says one resident can understand how why the developer is not following through on the approved plan for shops, services and sheltered retirement housing, which would have complemented the nearby care home. I just want clarification from somebody. I think I understand the situation correctly. Is it right that when we approved the care home, it came with a number of conditions, such as mentioned in the Chronicle Echo, and what's happened is that they sold off the plot to these guys, and in doing so have conveniently relieved themselves of those obligations. Is that what's happened? Because that's what appears to have happened. Have I got that right?
In terms of this application, this application is fresh, and so we have to determine it as it is. The previous application we can't comment on.
Okay. Any further comments?
I shan't be supporting the recommendation tonight, because I believe that we're building houses for the future, for families to live in and to enjoy, not to have something that I wouldn't be happy living in myself.
Thank you. Before making any comment, I wanted to raise a point of declaration of a potential interest here. When that last speaker was talking, Mr. Russell, he mentioned Futures Housing Group. There's nothing in the report that I'd picked up. The reason I raise it is because I am a nominated person for this council that sits on what's called an insight committee at Futures Housing. So I wanted to, before I make any comment on anything, what my position is. Insight Group is a group of tenants and tenants and board directors and things that look into the governance of in futures, and it's an appointment that is done by the council, and I've been on there for quite a while, so I just wanted to know whether it has any impact at all on this application. No, not a director. No, but it's a nominated body, but I'm an outside person that sits on there, nominated by WNC.
I think it's the matter for yourself as to whether you feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly happy to stand back from this one and not actually, yeah. So I don't want to say anything. So I'm happy. I mean, in terms of remaining in the room, I don't think it means I have to sit out in the room, but I may not make any comment on this.
Okay,
Can I just quickly come in? Just a quick comment. The fact that we do need affordable, social, and mixed-use housing, and this is what's offering. This application, this scheme is offering. I think we all agree that we do need housing, in West Northamptonshire, but we need quality homes, quality housings. I don't think I could support this application at the current form, but I do agree that the principal application, I think we all do agree that we do need housings, but not at current form. So I would second what Councillor Barrett has proposed, that we defer it and come back with a better proposal.
Defer it.
Yeah, thank you.
I think just listening to the discussion, I think what you could, it sounds like it's quite narrow. You want to see some extra quality in the scheme and some extra space. I think if you look at that space there, there's a potential lap space in there. How about you defer and we talk about potentially look at the feasibility of getting a lap in that space, that area of open space. I know you're looking for 2. We can explore the option of 2 and then look at some of those tandem parking issues and maybe some of those garden issues that you were saying. But I think if you were to go with that approach, then we can see if we can come back and negotiate some slight improvement. I don't think you're too far away, because I think there's not a lot that they're going to be able to do to change the overall viability mix, which is what we were talking about earlier. But I think there might be some improvements we could see if we can negotiate on and bring it back to you.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I'll go with that. I think we're close. We all see the need. We all see there's certainly in Daventry as well. I think there is that need. I think we've just duty bound to make sure we're doing it in the best interest of those inhabitants for the next 100 years. So I think the areas that I would specifically say 2 laps as well, north and south of that site, so we can have that within that police Simon. So I'm going to suggest we defer until Simon comes back with what he's just said in a good, nice way.
Item 5F, which is the Buckton Fields Primary School. So we're moving on to Buckton Fields then. Oliver, this is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This presentation will largely summarise the contents of the officer's report with regard to the retrospective planning application for the temporary school at Buckton Fields School to the west of Boughton. Next slide. The application site is located to the north of the existing Buckton Fields Primary School, which was closed in 2023 after concerns were identified with the building structure. The temporary school was completed in the summer of 2024 and opened at the start of the new 2024-25 academic year. is located on the area of a former playing field associated with the original school, and it is surrounded by residential development and Brampton Lane to the north. The application seeks retrospective planning permission for a temporary 2-storey primary school to the north of the existing Buckton Fields Primary School on a playing field associated with the closed school. The temporary school has been built to provide accommodation whilst the new school is constructed and demolished in due course. Yeah, next slide. And that's the site plan of the school, and the next slide shows the floor plans, and then we'll move on to the photos. The temporary school provides accommodation for 45 staff and 300 students. It comprises a large porta-cabin modular buildings that have been installed over 2 phases, a ground and a first floor phase. There is an area of hard standing around the temporary school with access provided to the south. Pedestrian and vehicular entrances remain the same as the former school. The application details that feasibility work relating to the deconstruction of the existing legacy school building and provision of new permanent accommodation at Buckton Fields has commenced. The target is to have the new school open by September 2026. A full application for the replacement school is expected in early 2025, and the demolition of the legacy building is likely to occur in early spring 25. The intention is therefore to remove the temporary accommodation in summer 2026, with the playing pitch reinstated. The key issues arising from the application include the principle of development, design and impact on the character and appearance of the area, loss of a playing field, impact on neighbouring amenity, highways and access, flooding, drainage and ecology. Principle for development for a primary school has already been established at the site. The temporary school is located within the curtilage of the existing primary school, makes use of existing external facilities and fulfills the requirement for a primary school at the site. A temporary period for the accommodation in line with the timescales provided by the applicant has been conditioned. Therefore, the principal development is considered acceptable. The temporary buildings are of an acceptable appearance and design and have been shown on the photos that Amy's going through, and are consistent with their intended temporary nature. The temporary school is set back from the site behind the current school and is read as part of the wider development of Buckton Fields. The proposal is not considered to have an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area, and any limited visual harm would be outweighed by the benefits of the scheme and its temporary nature. If you just go back to the site plan name. The temporary school results in the loss of the use of a playing field. The applicant has responded to the objection by Sport England outlining the timescales for reinstatement, the ability of the school to meet curricular sporting requirements, and the justification for the location selected for the temporary accommodation. Subject to a condition being imposed to secure the reinstatement of the playing fields and to limit the temporary permission to a set time frame, Sport England have removed their objection, and this condition has been added. It is not considered that the temporary school will have an adverse impact on neighbouring amenity, nor will it have an unacceptable impact on the public highway, and the site layout has been appropriately managed to deal with changes to the access requirements. Just go to the location. The Local Highways Authority have confirmed that the swap of the staff and visitor parent drop-off car parks is acceptable, and there will be no increased impact in respect of traffic generation and impact on the surrounding highway network. The Local Lead Flood Authority have confirmed that the information provided is satisfactory to demonstrate that the proposed surface water drainage scheme for the development will adequately manage flood risk, and no objection has been raised by Anglian Water. The site also lies within Flood Zone 1. No issues with ecology or landscape have been raised. On balance, the temporary school is of an acceptable design, scale and appearance, and any visual impact on the surrounding area will be outweighed by the need to provide a school use at the site that serves the local community. Given the temporary nature of the buildings, the loss of the playing field is considered acceptable, and the reinstatement of the playing fields can be secured by way of condition. It is not considered that development will have an adverse impact on neighbouring amenity, the highway, flooding and drainage, existing landscape features and protected species. This application is therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you, Oliver. We have no public speakers on this. So do you want to go straight to comments or questions, Harry?
Yeah, no, just for me, this needs to happen as soon as possible, and I'm just going to suggest we accept officers' recommendations.
Okay. Councillor Bearsworth?
No problem with that, but I'm making sure that the building is going to be safe now, where the first building wasn't safe and had to be knocked down, causing all these problems in the past. We're making absolutely sure that the temporary building and the new building will be safe for pupils to be in.
So that's not within our remit. I mean, the temporary building is separate to the existing building.
I appreciate that, but we must have passed the planning application for the first building at one time.
Again, through you, Chairman, the planning use of the site is what the planning permission was. It's outside of our remit in terms of how it's constructed, the method, construction, etc., which falls within building regulations.
Okay.
Entirely separate set of regulations. But we take the point, and
Yes.
certainly if the applicants...
This should never have happened, and because if the building had been safe to use, the school would have been in service from day one, rather than children being bussed all over the country.
Again, I hear what
schools.
I hear what you say through you, Chairman, but it's not within the
the
planning authority's remit.
Okay. I'm just making sure that
it's about how the site's developed and how it's used.
We understand your sentiment.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Cribbin.
Thank you, Chair. This sits within my ward, so I know this quite well. One thing I was wanted to make ask a comment, well, a question really of Oliver regarding. You mentioned that there'll be a separate planning application for the new school, so we're not going to go back to the old design and as it were, of the old school. So I think that probably reassures members here that we're going to have a completely fresh application for that new school going forward. One thing I just wanted to highlight, I suppose, Boughton Parish Council's comments about the bus lay-by and the road markings and things that haven't been delivered as part of the original application for the original school. I know it's not relevant to this application, but just wanted to highlight it again. I don't know whether, Oliver, you're going to be the officer that picks up the new application, but whether that's going to go forward. So officers are aware that we still think that locally is going to be something that is needed in the new application. But I welcome this application. It needs to be done as soon as possible, and let's get it done.
I was happy to recommend approval unless Harry wants to, and I'll second it.
Okay, so moving on then, we will move on to the final item. Just change over offices again, and this is the land at Grovelands Business Park, East Haddon. Okay, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. The application before members is for the construction of a building to incorporate offices, flexible offices, a coffee shop and a gym, and associated car parking. Next slide, please. The application site, known as Grovelands Business Park, is located within the open countryside and is in a special landscape area and is approximately 300 metres southwest of East Haddon. The initial office use on the site began in 2014, and in 2018 2 barns were granted change of use to offices. The existing buildings are currently occupied by 16 different companies and employ circa 110 people within them. Next slide, please. The next slide shows the block and parking plan and shows the new building and the car parking to be sited to the south of the existing office complex. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the floor plans and elevation plans. The proposal consists of the construction of a new building to provide mixed-use development that, as previously said, will comprise of high-grade office area, which will consist of 1,900 square metres, flexible office area consisting of 410 square metres, a coffee shop consisting of 560 square metres, and a gym area consisting of 500 square metres. The proposed development is within a well-established commercial hub and will help support and expand the existing business at Groveland's Business Park. There is a high degree of conformity with the spatial policies of the development plan, which would allow for the principle of developing the site for the new offices. Overall, the proposal is deemed to be acceptable from local highways point of view, amenity, and with regards to any impact on the special landscaped area. There have been no objections from any consultees, and 32 letters of support have been received. It is recommended to members that the application be approved, subject to Section 106 agreement relating to a workers' travel plan and the conditions set out in the officer's report. If we can just go back. This slide actually shows the landscaping plan. The proposed landscaping is designed to mitigate against any sort of adverse impact on the special landscaped area. We can have a look at some pictures. That's just the access road into the site. We can just see the sort of end elevation, side elevation of the existing buildings on the site. This is the converted barns that were are used as offices, existing offices at the present moment. This photo basically just shows the overall current complex on the site. And this picture shows the views to the southwest of the site. And that's basically it.
Okay, thank you very much. We have two speakers on this. I'll call on Harry Brown first, who would like to come and join us. Just say who you are, who you represent, and your 3 minutes will start.
Hello, my name's Harry Brown. I'm the owner of Groveland's Business Park. In 2017, I embarked on a mission to develop a premier rural business park in West Northants. My goal was to create high-quality offices with features typically found in prestigious urban business parks, attracting companies and their employees who seek reduced commuting times and an enhanced quality of life. The success of Phase 1 led to the launch of Phase 2 in 2020, which was immediately fully occupied. We now host 16 companies employing around 110 staff on site. Our tenants range from a large accountancy firm and a start-up fintech companies to a company managing the global brand rights for Lambretta. I'm pleased to report the solar park I installed alongside the business park now provides 100% of the site's energy needs, making Groveland's Business Park the only one in the district to achieve this milestone. We are currently faced with a challenge of supporting the growth and expansion of some of our companies who love the location but need additional or larger office space for their growth. The proposed application sympathetically adds new offices, including a gym, cafe, and flexible office space to help encourage start-up companies, along with a wildlife garden and recreational walks as requested by our tenants. These additions will help reduce off-site vehicle movements and contribute to creating employment opportunities for the local area. I ask the committee to support this application to help the growth of our existing tenants while benefiting the local community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Just remain there. I'll see if anyone's got any questions. Any questions? No? Haven't. Sorry about that. But there you go. You never know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we're going to call on Bryn Aldridge next. Right to come and join us. And again, you've got 3 minutes.
I'm getting the sense that everybody wants to go home. Hello, my name is Bryn Aldridge. Thank you for the time here. I'm a director of a company called iTelematics, and I'm here to speak in support of the application of this new gym, coffee shop and offices. My company has been there since 2017. I operate in the fintech sector, and I moved here, or brought my business here from Oxfordshire after a very extensive search for nice offices in the area. I was the very first tenant on Phase 1, And then when the second phase was built, I needed more space, and I was very fortunate and able to be the first tenant in that phase as well. Quite simply, there's nothing comparable within a 15-mile radius that provides the kind of high-spec, professional environment needed to attract and retain the talented staff in a sort of rural area. The applicant's business has given businesses like mine the opportunity to grow and thrive without needing to relocate to large cities or industrial estates. One of the key benefits for my staff is the reduced time to spend commuting. Most of my team live locally and spend less than 15 minutes commuting to work, which not only improves their work-life balance, but also significantly reduces their carbon footprint. For businesses like mine, this is becoming an increasingly important when it comes to hiring and then retaining the best talent. The applicant has also invested in sustainable infrastructure. He's just mentioned it, his large-scale solar power. That offsets the use of electricity on site, but also we've got, I think it's 30 or 40 electric vehicle charging points. Again, hugely attractive to my staff and their staff well-being. It's worth noting that there are very few opportunities for high-value employment in this area. For those living within the NN6 postcode, the alternatives are often to commute long distance to take lower-paid roles in the many warehouses like Durft and alongside the M1. Very good for the area, great value in terms of business rates, but I would argue that generally low-value employment. The site provides something different, high-value jobs in the professional services right here in rural Northamptonshire. The proposed extension to this development will offer several important benefits. For my staff, it will bring additional amenities such as a gym, cafe and nature areas which improve the working environment and support their well-being. It will also provide temporary meeting spaces that we can use for visitors, training sessions or to accommodate growing teams when we start to run out of space. Looking to the future, the new offices include the extensions that will give us flexibility to expand in the future without needing to move our business elsewhere. That kind of long-term planning is essential for businesses like mine and ensures we can continue to invest in this local community. I urge you to approve this application.
Not a question, a comment.
Questions first?
So I just wanted a comment of the officer.
Okay, right. No questions, so you're fine to go. Right, so anything you want to come back on there? Anything that's been said so far?
Nothing further to add.
Questions to the officers then now?
Yeah, questions. This sounds like a wonderful opportunity to expand. I wonder if you agree with me on that this is the sort of things that we need in West Northants to attract good companies to come and stay here.
Certainly do.
Yeah, it was a question of the opposite. I just wanted to see the pictures again of the proposals because, look, seeing the photographs, it's like the barn, and I'm assuming it's going to be the same. Looks exactly the same. The new stuff is going to be the same materials as the old, and it's going to look exactly the same. Is that right?
They are very similar indeed.
That's fine. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, hold on. Harry wants to ask a question.
No, just a comment.
Okay. Any further questions before I move to comments? Right, let's go for it then. Harry, we'll come around the table. Harry, you comment first.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm going to support this wholeheartedly. I think creating such a positive hub environment for that area. I agree with the comments regarding the NN6 postcode as well. I think this will add real systematic value to employing but then retaining good staff, and that's the most important thing. We want that here, so absolutely going to vote for this. So I'd encourage us all to go to the vote now and vote for this.
That's passed. So thank you very much for your attendance tonight, and I'll close the meeting. Do you find the new room